They say families forever. Mine proved otherwise over dry-aged steak and overpriced wine. It was supposed to be my dad's birthday dinner, his 60th, a milestone, a celebration. A night that spiraled into something I still replay in my head like a bad movie, except in this one. The villains wore pearls, fake smiles, and drank $400 wine. On my tab. Let me back up. I'm Max, 32 software developer. Pretty decent gig at a mid-tier AI firm in Portland. Not a tech god, not broke either. I've done well enough that my annual bonus could buy someone a modest car. Or 3 months of therapy, which I probably need after this. Anyway, this dinner, my mother Delilah, 58 self-proclaimed energy coach don't ask, picked the restaurant. Classy place, white tablecloths, the kind of lighting that makes you look 10 years younger but the bill 50 times older. She said Dad liked the ambiance. That was code for she liked the ambiance. By the time I arrived 25 minutes late because of a code merge gone nuclear, they were already halfway through the appetizers. No one noticed. Correction, no one cared. My dad, Gary, didn't glance up. My younger brother, Theo, 29, a TikTok branding expert with more excuses than followers, barely looked up from his phone. I slid into the only empty seat, next to a woman I didn't recognize. Turned out she was Mom's spiritual nutritionist. Apparently, we needed her energy at this dinner more than mine. Cool. As the conversation floated around vacations they took, which I paid for, new projects they were launching that I also funded, and totally not a pyramid scheme investment ideas, thanks Uncle Daryl, I just sat there, calculating the damage. Mentally, financially, emotionally. Then Mom stood up, glass in hand. To new beginnings, she smiled. Starting today, we're no longer a family. The room laughed. At first, until no one corrected her. No, just kidding, no chuckle, no wink, just smug smiles. A few claps. Theo muttered. Finally, under his breath, like I was some exorcised demon. I froze. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny. The kind of laugh you let out when your world glitches and you realize you're the punchline. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the key fob to the Tesla I bought them last Christmas, set it on the table. Well, I said, then you probably won't need this anymore. The room went dead quiet. No one breathed. Even the waiter hesitated mid-pour. And I wasn't done. Pulled out my phone, opened the shared trust account, the one that funded their mortgage, cars, utilities, credit cards, Theo's business retreats, Mom's Reiki retreats. I tapped a few buttons. Account closed. Balance zeroed. Mom blinked. Theo looked like someone just shut off his Wi-Fi. Dad grunted. Max, come on, don't be dramatic. You just announced I'm not family. I said, voice even. So now, you're not my responsibility. I stood up. Dinner's on you tonight. Then walked out. Back at my hotel, a quiet, cozy place downtown, I turned my phone off. First time in years I didn't feel the buzz of guilt, the pressure of keeping their chaos running. I ordered a drink, watched a game I didn't care about, and let myself breathe. By 2 a.m., 27 missed calls, 12 from Mom, 9 from Theo, 3 from unknown numbers, 1 from Dad. Ignored all of them. The next day, I went home to my real home, the one they'd only visited once, and only to ask if they could use it for a photo shoot. I made coffee, sat in silence, and for once, didn't feel like an afterthought. That afternoon, my Aunt Jess showed up. She's Dad's sister. Always liked her. Brought lasagna Midwest code for I have tea. She told me everything. The dinner speech? Planned. They'd been gossiping for weeks, telling an extended family they were cutting out toxic energy. Me? That I was emotionally manipulative for questioning where my money was going. They thought you'd beg to come back, she said. Didn't think you'd actually pull the plug. I laughed. Not the broken kind, the real kind. Then I made a list. Every single account I had that touched them, joint checking, car insurance, credit lines, streaming services, you name it. Anything I had co-signed, paid for, subscribed to, and I cut the cord. 2 days later, I got served. Yup, they were suing me for elder financial abuse. I kid you not. My parents, who hadn't worked a full year between them in over a decade, were trying to sue me for not continuing to support their luxury lifestyle. They wanted $900,000. Said I emotionally manipulated them into being dependent, framed my financial support as coercion. Best part? Theo joined the suit too. Sent my company an email claiming I was harassing him. Attached screenshots of me reminding him to pay the electric bill. Real abuse, right? I walked into my boss's office thinking I'd get canned. Instead, he slid me the email and said, "Want to talk about it?" So I did. He nodded. Take the week. And good on you. I wasn't alone. Turns out, betrayal runs in the family, but so does loyalty. That night, I got a message from my cousin Ruby. We hadn't talked in years. She said, they tried to get my dad to join the lawsuit. He told them to screw off. And I've got something you'll want to hear. What she sent changed everything. The next morning, Ruby sent the files. They were recordings. Phone calls, mostly. My mom's voice, clear as day, chirping away like she didn't know phones could betray her too. This is how we keep Max in line, she said in one. He feels guilty, another clip added. All I have to do is cry and mention the accident, and bam, another $5 K. There were 20 of these. 20! Each worse than the last. My dad coaching Theo on how to act wounded. My mom bragging to her book club friend that I'd never grow a spine. Theo laughing about how I still thought they loved me. It was a masterclass in emotional blackmail, and they'd been running it for years. Apparently, Aunt Jess had been quietly collecting the recordings, said she didn't know what to do with them until now. You have a good heart, she texted, but they've been bleeding you dry. Time you stop the drip, she wasn't wrong. I sent the files to my lawyer. Yes, I finally got one. His name's Ian. Sharp suit, sharper tongue, the kind of guy who could make a jury feel sorry for a parking meter. He listened to the first 5 recordings and just said, "We're not settling." Then he added, "Let's go on the offensive." I didn't post the recordings online. That wasn't the point. I wasn't looking for clout. I wasn't looking for pity. I wanted closure and consequences. So we countered the lawsuit with a fraud claim, identity theft, financial abuse, the whole buffet of legal trouble. Turns out, giving people your personal info for 10 years, Social Security, address, history, tax docs, makes it pretty easy for them to rob you blind, and for you to prove it. My mom had opened 2 credit cards in my name. Theo used my old address to sign up for a business loan. They even listed me as a silent partner in some fake wellness startup. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. Thanks for the resume boost, I guess. The real fun began when Ian reached out to the banks. We pulled the statements. Every transfer I made to them. Every transaction. Every payment. $628, $447.12 over 8 years. That was the price tag of my guilt. Then came the cherry on top. My dad wasn't even legally disabled. He'd been working part-time for his cousin's roofing company cash only, off the books, all while collecting disability benefits, which is, in case you're wondering, a felony. When I found out, I didn't scream. I didn't even call him. I just printed the evidence and submitted it to the benefits fraud hotline. Let them call him for once. Around that time, Theo's influencer brand took a hit. Someone on Twitter, no idea who, okay, it was Ruby, posted a now deleted clip of him saying, "Being broke is a mindset," while wearing a $700 hoodie that I bought him. He got dragged into the digital trash compactor. Sponsorships pulled. Instagram account suspended for shady affiliate links. A viral TikTok accusing him of fake wealth flexing hit 200K likes in 2 days. He posted an apology video. Tears, shaky voice, the whole performance. Comments weren't buying it. Bro got caught and turned into a Sad Boys the Second Men lyric, one said. Brutal, deserved. I stayed silent. Didn't gloat, didn't tweet, didn't even talk about it at work. I just sat back, watched the mess unfold, and let the natural consequences do what they do best. But Mom? She didn't go down quietly. She started calling everyone. Aunts, uncles, even my high school friends, telling them I was mentally unstable, that I'd had a breakdown, that I was being manipulated by a shady lawyer. She said I was dangerous. What she didn't know was that most of them had already seen the evidence. Jess wasn't the only one who turned. Ruby shared everything with her parents. Ian reached out to some of the relatives listed on the lawsuit as supporting witnesses. Most of them were shocked. Some apologized. One cousin even Venmo'd me $100 with a note. Sorry for ever believing them. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. The lawsuit didn't last. Ian tore through it like it was tissue paper. Filed a motion to dismiss with prejudice. Attached all the proof recordings, transactions, fraud filings, even a notarized letter from my bank confirming the accounts they opened in my name. The judge threw the whole thing out. And we weren't done. Ian filed a civil claim for damages, emotional distress, financial loss, identity theft. My parents were about to get a taste of what accountability actually felt like. Then came the knock. It was a Saturday. Quiet, sunny, unassuming. I opened the door, expecting Amazon. It was my dad. Not angry, not smug. He looked small, worn down. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. "Can we talk?" I stood there, holding the door frame like a lifeline. My chest felt like a frozen lake ready to crack open. But I didn't move. Not an inch. "Please," he said again. "Not here," I replied. He blinked, confused. "You chose your stage, Dad. You disowned me with an audience. If you want to talk, file a motion." I closed the door. Soft, quiet, final. That night, I walked to the fridge, grabbed a soda, and sat on the balcony. Portland was golden that evening. The sky stretched out like a warm bruise, beautiful and broken, and I felt peace. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't wondering who needed money, who was lying, who I had to chase down for receipts. I was just me. No strings, no weight, no obligations. But the silence didn't last. Not for long, because 3 weeks later, Theo tried to open a new credit card in my name. So, Theo tried again. After everything, the lawsuit, the backlash, the recordings, the fraud investigations, this man still had the audacity to apply for a new credit card using my name. I got the alert on a Thursday morning. You know, one of those quiet, coffee-sipping mornings where the air feels kind, the world still, like maybe peace is a thing you can trust. Then, ping, new credit application alert for Max Calder. I blinked, sat there for a second, wondering if it was old data, a delay, a glitch in the system. It wasn't. Theo had used my full name, my birthday, and an address I hadn't lived at in 5 years. The application even listed me as self-employed at Theo Creative Media, which, for the record, isn't even an actual company, just his handle on Instagram. I closed the email, took a breath, pushed my chair back, and opened a folder on my desktop called Fallout Protocol. Yes, I named it that. Yes, I'd been building it for weeks. See, part of me wanted to blow it all up. Send out emails, social posts, maybe even leak the audio recordings that hadn't gone public yet. But I didn't, because I'd learned something important through all this. People like them expect fire. They expect rage, yelling, screaming. That's how they stay in control. If they can get you to lose it, they can paint themselves as the victims. So I gave them something worse. Silence. I called Ian. He picked up on the first ring. "Morning," he said. "You get the same email I did?" "Yup. Want me to handle it?" "No," I replied. "I want to escalate. We filed a police report. Identity theft, second strike. The bank flagged the attempted application, added it to our case log." Meanwhile, Ian reached out to our contact at the state attorney's office, who was already investigating the previous fraud. They were very interested in a second offense, especially when they realized Theo had used my name on documents for a fake LLC. Turns out, he listed me as the co-founder of T Media Company in a business proposal sent to potential sponsors. That's right. He tried to monetize my identity. I forwarded everything to Sarah, the forensic accountant I'd hired earlier. She's sharp, the kind of woman who makes spreadsheets into weapons. In 48 hours, she found 3 more business accounts where my name had been used as leverage. PayPal, Stripe, and one sketchy crypto exchange I'd never heard of. Each one opened with a burner email. Each one traced back to Theo. And get this, he was funneling the money into a Venmo account under the name TMX Consulting. Creative, right? At this point, I wasn't even angry. I was clinical. I collected every screenshot, every document, every transaction, organized them by date, labeled each folder, made a Google Drive link. Then I sent it to the bank. to the police. To the sponsors who had been in contact with Team Media Company and Just for Fun, to his college alumni board, since he still claimed he was an advisor on their creative team, which was also a lie. 3 days later, his accounts got locked. Stripe froze his assets. Venmo flagged the payments for fraud. The crypto exchange sent a notice that his balance was under investigation and pending federal review. His response? A blurry Instagram story of him yelling into his phone. Sweaty. Rambling. I'm being targeted. My family is toxic. I'm the victim. Max is a narcissist. I watched it twice. Then I blocked him. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad had gone radio silent. After the lawsuit crashed and burned, they pulled back. I figured they were licking their wounds, maybe trying to play the long game. But no, turns out they were busy. Busy trying to remortgage their house. Again. And guess whose name they used on the preliminary application? Yup, mine. Even after I revoked everything, power of attorney, co-signed loans, trust access, they'd used old documents, forged signatures, claimed I'd reinstated support. So I escalated again. This time, I didn't just report them. I filed a formal affidavit of fraud, attached copies of the revoked agreements, called the mortgage lender myself, sent them the police report. 2 days later, the bank halted the process. The underwriter flagged the file. And then, my favorite part, they contacted the fraud department. That's when everything started crumbling. Their mortgage was already shaky. They'd been barely keeping up after I shut the faucet off. And now, with no refinancing, no fresh cash injection, they were underwater, and not metaphorically. Foreclosure became a real word in their mailbox. But here's the wild part. They still didn't call me. No apology, no email, no tearful voicemail begging for forgiveness. No. They called Jess, said they were being harassed, said I was out to ruin them, that I was obsessed with punishing them. Jess, bless her heart, told them the truth. You ruined your son long before he stopped helping you. Then she hung up. That same night, I got a knock on the door. It wasn't family this time. It was 2 men in suits. Investigators from the State Fraud Division. They were building a case. Turns out, mine wasn't the only complaint against my parents. A few other people, extended family, old acquaintances, had reported weird loans and unreturned funds tied to Dad's shell company. Remember that cousin's roofing gig? Yeah, he wasn't just paying Dad under the table. They were writing invoices for jobs that never existed, filing taxes with fake deductions, claiming disabled veteran benefits. Even though my dad never served, it was deeper than I thought. By this point, I was exhausted, not angry, not victorious, just drained. I'd spent years trying to carry them, years funding their fantasies, years hoping they'd change. And when I finally said enough, they tried to steal from me again and again, like I was just a walking debit card. But I didn't fold. I didn't rage. I built the wall, brick by brick. And now, they were on the outside, free-falling. And for once, I didn't offer a parachute. The next few weeks were strangely quiet. Not peaceful, quiet. Like the moment before a landslide. Everything still. Everything waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. The damage had already been done. Now it was about sealing the fallout, making sure none of them could slither back into my life through some legal loophole or guilt-drenched apology. I had moved from defense to offense. Finally, the state launched a full investigation into my dad's fake disability claim. Ian looped me into the updates. He's looking at restitution, maybe jail time, he said one afternoon, casually. Like he was talking about weekend weather. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch either. I just said, good. Meanwhile, Theo's fraud case was officially escalated. Sarah had found more digital evidence, ghost invoices, fake business proposals, money laundering red flags. He'd been funneling PayPal donations under the guise of a charity campaign for a cause that didn't exist. He called it Help Creators Thrive. Except all the money went into his personal crypto wallet. No thrive, just lies. The kicker? He used my name on some of the promo material, listed me as a silent donor. I guess that made me his accomplice on paper. So we flipped it. Ian filed a cease and desist. Sent it to every platform hosting his materials. Sarah followed with fraud affidavits and banking reports. Within a week, every platform flagged his accounts. Sponsorships gone, business license revoked, crypto account frozen. And me, still silent, still not returning his calls. Because yes, he started calling again. Blocked numbers. Voicemails that sounded half panic, half pity. Max, come on, man, we were just trying to build something. You were building a prison. I just built the key. One day, I came home and found a letter taped to my front door. Handwritten, no envelope, just taped there like some low-budget horror movie prop. It was from Mom. The handwriting shook. The words didn't. She called me selfish, cold, ungrateful. Said she didn't raise me to destroy my family. Didn't mention the money, or the lies, or the forged documents. Didn't apologize, just accused. She ended the letter with, I hope one day you understand what it means to be a mother. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it, walked to the fire pit in my backyard, and watched it burn. The day of the civil hearing came fast. It wasn't criminal yet. That was still in the hands of the state. But the fraud, the identity theft, the financial loss, all of it was on the table. They showed up together. Mom, Dad, Theo. No lawyers. Just them. Looking worn. Smaller than I remembered. Not physically, spiritually. The kind of small that happens when the mask finally falls off and there's no more crowd to clap for you. They tried to speak before the judge came in. Theo mumbled, Can we just talk, man? I didn't look at him. Ian answered for me. Any communication must go through counsel. Dad looked ready to argue, but Mom stopped him. Just grabbed his arm and shook her head. Smart move for once. The hearing itself wasn't flashy. No dramatic speeches, no slammed gavels, just Ian, calm and razor sharp, laying everything out. The money trail, the forged forms, the fake businesses, the identity theft. He didn't need to embellish. The truth was loud enough. When it was their turn to respond, Mom tried tears, Dad tried confusion, Theo tried silence. It didn't work. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. They were ordered to pay back over $100,000 in damages, plus legal fees, plus a permanent restraining order barring them from opening anything in my name ever again. They couldn't afford it, obviously, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the judgment. It was official now. They had to face, on paper, what they tried so hard to hide in whispers and manipulation. When we walked out, Ian clapped me on the shoulder. You did good, he said. But I didn't feel good. I didn't feel bad either. I felt done. Like a chapter closed, and I didn't need to reread it to know how it ended. A few nights later, I drove out to the coast. I needed space. Water. Air that didn't feel like it came with a history. I rented a little cabin, wood walls, no Wi-Fi, nothing but the sound of the sea crashing against rock. And for 2 days, I just sat with myself. No plans, no people, just me and silence. I thought about who I was before all this. The kid who stayed up all night learning to code on a hand-me-down laptop, who said yes every time someone needed help, who told himself next time would be different, that this time they meant it. I grieved for him. And then I let him go. By the time I drove back home, the foreclosure was public. Their house? Gone. Theo's social media presence? Wiped. Mom and Dad's reputation? Tanked. Some extended family tried to guilt trip me. Said I should have let it go, been the bigger person. I ignored them, because none of them knew the cost of always being the bigger person, the debt of staying silent, the weight of never being allowed to say no. Instead, I sent thank you letters to Aunt Jess, to Ruby, to Ian, to Sarah. People who didn't just watch me drown, they threw ropes. And more than that, they reminded me what real family feels like. It doesn't demand, it doesn't guilt. It doesn't betray you and call it love. I wish I could say this was the end, that they disappeared quietly, that the story closed cleanly. But life doesn't do clean. It lingers. It echoes. And sometimes, even after you burn the bridge, you still see the smoke. When the smoke clears, nobody tells you what comes next. You don't get a parade. No marching band. No cinematic score as the credits roll. Just silence. Maybe some emails. A voicemail from someone who once judged you now pretending they didn't, and your own reflection sharper than you remember. I came back from the coast with a clearer mind than I'd had in years. There's something about salt air and distance that makes betrayal shrink to its true size. My family had tried to crush me under their weight for over a decade, and for the first time, I could finally breathe without them standing on my chest. So I got to work. Not the kind of work one used to do, patching financial holes they'd poked in my life. I mean real work, rebuilding, reconnecting, restoring the parts of myself that had gone quiet just to keep the peace. The first thing I did was purge old documents, emails, photos, receipts, birthday cards with guilt hidden between glittery lines. Gone. I even deleted Theo's contact, the last thread. Then I changed my locks, digitally and physically. New phone, new passwords, new locks on every door, even the mental ones. Because I realized healing wasn't just about stopping the bleeding. It was about making sure they never had the chance to cut me again. I finally reached out to people I'd neglected, college friends I'd lost touch with because I was always too busy, which really meant too drained. A few answered immediately. Some were cautious. But most said the same thing. I always wondered where you went. Turns out, when you spend years hiding your pain behind generosity, people assume you're fine. And when you finally speak, they listen, really listen. I told my story to a few of them, the real one. No sugarcoat, no hero cape, just the facts. Every single one said the same thing in their own way. You deserved better. I hadn't heard that in a long time. I poured energy into work too, but in a different way this time. Not to climb a ladder, not to distract myself, but to build. I'd been freelancing on the side for a while, nothing major, just small back-end gigs. But now I saw an opportunity, a fresh start. So I created something of my own. A tech consultancy. Small at first, just me, a laptop, and a few clients I trusted. No late-night calls from people crying over forgotten passwords. No just this one-time emergencies. I named it North Root Systems because after all that loss, I wanted something grounded, something with depth. Within a few months, I had steady income, total freedom, and something I never expected: pride. Not the kind that needs to be seen. The kind you feel in your bones when you look at your life and think, yeah, I built this. No one else gets credit. One of the first checks I wrote was to myself. It wasn't big. Just enough to cover a weekend retreat in the mountains. A quiet cabin tucked into the woods, with firewood stacked neatly and a path that led to nowhere in particular. I stayed for 3 days, cooked simple meals, read half a novel, wrote in a journal for the first time in 10 years. Not about my family, not about revenge, just about how it felt to be alone and not lonely. There's a difference. Back in the city, things continued shifting. Word got out about my parents. You'd think it would be a dramatic fallout, more family drama, shouting matches at reunions, cryptic social media posts. But no, it was quieter than that. Like people collectively decided to stop pretending. My mom's old friends stopped returning her calls. Her Reiki clients canceled. The lifestyle coach Instagram she used to run, gone. My dad's name stopped being mentioned at golf nights. Turns out, the people who helped him hide his fake disability didn't want to get caught in the fire too. And Theo? I got a text from a mutual friend one afternoon, dude. Theo's working at a call center in Spokane, 2 p.m., 10 p.m. shift. Apparently, he still thinks you're going to forgive him. I didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. Sometimes it's about letting yourself walk away without the weight of their apology. A few months later, I was invited to a wedding. One of those friends I'd reconnected with. She was marrying her partner of 8 years. Small, intentional, backyard string lights and barefoot dancing. During the reception, her dad gave a speech. It wasn't perfect. He stumbled through some of it. But the way he looked at her, the way he ended it with, "I'm proud of the woman you've become, not because of what you've done, but because of who you are," it gutted me. Not because I was sad, but because I finally realized I didn't need that speech from my own father anymore. I didn't need it. I had become who I was in spite of them, not because of them, and that made it mine. Later that night, I sat by the fire pit with a couple people I barely knew, talking about nothing, music, hiking trails, weird dreams. And it hit me. This is what freedom sounds like. It's not loud. It's not explosive. It's the rustle of trees, the crackle of fire, the laughter that doesn't feel like it's covering pain. It's strangers becoming friends without trying to fix or fund each other. I still have the court order framed in my office. Not out of spite, just as a reminder that I said no, that I drew a line, and that, for once in my life, no one crossed it. A year passed. It's funny how fast time moves when you're not bleeding out for other people. 12 months, 4 seasons, one life reclaimed piece by piece, and not once did I hear their voices. No calls, no letters, no unexpected knocks on the door trying to explain or manipulate or cry on cue. Nothing. It was blissfully strange, like walking through a forest that used to be on fire. Everything scorched and black, but finally quiet. New green sprouting between the ashes. A place you can breathe again, even if it still smells a little like smoke. I didn't forget them, but I stopped remembering them the same way. The flashbacks weren't bitter anymore, just blurry. Less fire, more fog. The kind of memory you feel from a distance but don't let live in your bones. Even the anger faded. That part surprised me, because for so long my rage felt like armor. Like if I let it go, they'd win. But one day I realized they didn't need my forgiveness or my fury. They just needed to stay gone, and I needed to move forward. North root systems grew faster than I expected. I hired 2 contractors, got a small office, nothing fancy, just a room with light, plants, and enough space to think. My name was on the door, just mine, and the silence, still there, but different now, softer, like a friend who knew how to sit beside me without needing to speak. I started sleeping better, eating better, even laughing without waiting for the guilt to follow. Freedom isn't loud. It's the quiet certainty that you don't owe anyone your ruin anymore. Then, out of nowhere, I got the letter. Not from them, from the bank. Apparently, my parents had listed me again on an application. An error, they said. A leftover from an old document. It didn't go through, but it triggered a compliance review. For a moment, my stomach clenched like it used to. Old reflex. Then I called Ian. He handled it before lunch. No drama, no fire. Just 1 email, 2 phone calls, and a soft it's done. That night, I went for a walk. No music, no phone, just the rhythm of my feet and the cold air settling in my lungs. And I thought, this is what the end really looks like. Not some climactic final showdown, not a courtroom explosion, just the absence of chaos, the kind of stillness you only earn by surviving it. Sometime later, I ran into my cousin Ava at a coffee shop. We hugged. Talked. She hesitated at first. You could see it in her shoulders. But then she leaned in. They're living with Theo now, she said quietly. All 3 of them. In a rental outside Spokane. I raised an eyebrow. They back together again? Ava nodded. Barely. From what I heard, they fight more than they eat. But they're figuring it out. Without me, I said. She smiled. That's the best part. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. It wasn't about whether they were happy or suffering. I wasn't tracking their downfall like some sad hobby. I was just done. And that's its own kind of peace. 6 months after that, I got another message. Not a call, not a knock, just a photo, texted from an unknown number. It was a picture of my dad standing outside a factory building, holding a clipboard, wearing a hard hat, no caption, no explanation, but I knew what it meant. He had a job, a real one. Then, 2 days later, another text. This time, it was Mom. A picture of her behind a receptionist's desk. Hair shorter, eyes tired, but standing, present. No message, just the image. The final one came a week later. Theo. It was a screenshot of his LinkedIn profile. Medical admin assistant, Spokane Orthopedics. I stared at it for a while, not because I missed them, but because for the first time in forever, they weren't pretending anymore. They weren't scheming or crying or begging or stealing. They were just living for themselves. Finally, I never replied, and I never will, because closure isn't about the door swinging shut in someone's face. It's about knowing you locked it, and you're the only one with the key. These days, I don't tell the story often. Not because I'm ashamed, but because it's not the defining chapter anymore. It's a scar, not an open wound. People ask me why I didn't give them another chance, why I didn't show compassion. And I always say the same thing I did, over and over. But there comes a point where love becomes enabling and forgiveness becomes self-destruction. And the strongest thing you can do is leave. My therapist, yeah, I finally got one, told me once, "You didn't stop being their family. You just stopped playing their role." And that stuck with me because that's all I was for so long, a role. The fixer, the money, the emotional sponge. Now, I'm just Max, a guy who learned the hard way that family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when you're bleeding, not to tell you you're dramatic, but to hand you a bandage and say, "You don't deserve this. Let's get you out." I keep a photo on my desk now. It's not of them. It's me, on the cabin porch, coffee in one hand, dog in the other, laugh lines just starting to form. Not because life got easy, but because I stopped choosing hard. That photo reminds me every day, freedom isn't loud, but it echoes. Story 2, I discovered 2 things about my family when I was 16. I was awful at keeping quiet, and silence was essential for survival. I refrained from screaming. I refrained from rebelling. I just inquired as to why Aunt Marlene had stopped visiting after the will was made. Why was Dad's study and 2 sets of accounting books present? Mom said, "We don't discuss that." But why? Every time the Sycamore Street fire was brought up, at home, they began labeling me disturbed, but they told our neighbors that I had an artistic temperament. My bedroom was relocated to the basement. During supper with visitors, I was not permitted to sit at the table. According to Mom, it was because I caused discomfort to others. I never longer received invitations to family holidays. There was always some excuse. Now is not the time. We are taking a low-key approach. You must get some rest. They reduced the size of my environment and then held me accountable for how I responded. And the one time I confided in my English instructor, enough to indicate that anything is amiss at home, she was worried and phoned my parents. I found the bedroom vacant when I got home that evening. No desk, no bed. There's only a bag beside the door. Mom gave me a pack of folded paper. "Lakeview Wellness is where you are heading. You'll receive the assistance you require." I gazed at her. "What? Assist?" She grinned. "The type that silences you." I also understood that I hadn't been banished. They had obliterated me. Shortly after noon, the file arrived. A fresh inpatient, extreme nervousness, dissociation episodes, night terrors, violent outbursts induced by memories. Remember, 25 years old. Name Monroe, Tyler. I waited for my pulse to calm down while I gazed at the page. That was a name I recognized. I had been raised with it. Every time someone uttered it, I heard it. "Why are you unable to emulate your brother more?" My hand kept steady. When I addressed the attending, my voice remained steady. I assured her that I would take the case. She inquired whether I was sure. "Yes," I replied. I said a falsehood. Tyler was 13 when I last saw him. 2 strangers in white jackets were leading me out the front door as he stood at the top of the stairs. He didn't inquire about my destination. He remained silent. He did nothing except observe. And now, years later, his intake papers were being delivered to me. He has little medical records, too thin, as though the narrative had been thoroughly cleaned. 2 days prior, Tyler had been hospitalized after he attacked a mirror in his own apartment. Neighbors heard the screams, but he had no recollection of committing it. He continued to yell a name, they said. They were unable to identify it. I made a guess. I entered the observation room that afternoon. Standard arrangement, one-way glass, and neutral lighting. Before he saw me, I saw him. The same face, older, delicate. Right now, the skin is taut over the jaw, eyes that dart aimlessly. He appeared disoriented. He appeared to be awaiting a ghost. And for the first time in 13 years, I thought maybe I'm not the only one who was tormented. That night, I didn't get any sleep. The call schedule, the charts, and the typical stress of residency, I told myself. However, that was untrue. The reality was easier. When I saw my mother's eyes on a younger face, I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared to stand on the other side of my brother and act like this was just another case file. This was not fair. It was a mirror. Furthermore, I had no idea who would break first. I typed the handover request the next morning. When the wait becomes unbearable, I wrote what every inhabitant writes: conflict, personal background, and desire for reassignment. I didn't turn it in. During coffee rounds, I chose to sit across from Dr. Patel instead. She had spent 2 rotations as my attending psychologist. She was familiar with the appearance of quiet pressure. She glanced at me and then at the blank form I was holding. "You're allowed to walk away, Elise. But first, ask yourself this. Which are you defending, him or the person they instructed you to be?" I didn't respond. I had none. What if the purpose of this was not to heal him? What if all I really wanted was for them to see me as a professional, not as a patient or an issue, someone they were unable to ignore, silence, or erase with a single phone call? Justice wasn't served. It was ego, and ego doesn't belong in treatment. However, another thing did: responsibility. By the end of the day, I reopened Tyler's file. I cleared my schedule for the following 72 hours, and I stepped back into that clinic knowing one thing for certain. I had no desire for vengeance. Truth was what I sought. Perhaps that posed a greater risk. The house was still standing, barely. It hadn't been sold, just left to rot. Boarded windows, yellowed mailbox, a patch of dead grass where the rose bushes used to be. I parked across the street and waited. I wasn't sure what I was searching for. Closure, maybe, or confirmation that I hadn't imagined at all. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was inside. The wallpaper had peeled. Mold clung to the corners. The kitchen reeked of filth and ancient gas lines. But the staircase, it looked precisely the same. Third step from the top still creaked. There was still a slight scent of control and lemon polish in the corridor. I went to my old room, but I recalled the floorboard by the window, even though they had scraped it naked. The one that changed when you took the perfect step. I pulled it up, expecting nothing. Instead, I discovered a child's artwork, a letter in fading ink, and a little tin box within a folded photograph. Mine. I was 16 in the picture, crossed arms, standing with Miss S. Rivera, our former neighbor. "You don't imagine the truth," replied the woman who used to bring me books. "You're the first to notice it." It was her note. It said, "I witnessed their actions. You weren't ill. You frightened them. You will return one day. Don't knock when you do. Now take your spot." She had believed me, I thought, as I sat on the floor with the letter in my lap. Suddenly, I was no longer in that room to recall what I had lost because someone had trusted me. I was there to regain who I'd always been. The next morning, I felt the weight of the letter in my coat pocket as I entered the hospital. It seemed odd that you could grow taller from something as little as a folded sheet of paper. Tyler's first actual session was planned. I requested that he be brought into the consultation room by the nurse. With my notebook in hand, I waited. The antiseptic was inhaled. "Be calm." He appeared slightly older than I recalled when the door opened. He had a rawness about him, a sort of unresolved anguish that only those who were raised to believe that suffering was personal can display. I wasn't recognized by him. When I introduced myself, not initially. "Monroe, doctor," he blinked. A moment of bewilderment. He clenched his teeth the way he used to when he was a kid and didn't want to weep. His eyes darted all over but my face as he sat down. I went over the typical questions. Go to sleep. Hunger. Recall. Nightmares. He was careful and clipped in his response, as though he didn't want to reveal anything. He eventually glanced up halfway through. "Have we already met?" I halted. I forced myself to suppress the old lie-telling inclination. "The town where we grew up is the same," I said. His hands continued to move even after he nodded. He seemed anxious, looking around, as if he were trying to find a door in the dark. There was more quiet than words at the end of the session, but I could tell that something had changed. I noticed for the first time not just my brother, but also the wounds the family had inflicted on us. Also, for the first time in a long time, I had the pen in my hand. I began to probe around Tyler rather than into him. His medical record was not as full as it ought to have been. 2 hospital stays that went beyond hazy notes were both unrecorded. Stress-associated episode watch for delusions. No long-term planning, no diagnoses. Silence and a trail of exits. I formally requested his previous therapy records. There was opposition to it. A sealed manila package then showed up on my desk 2 days later. 5 compact discs with labels indicating Tyler Monroe sessions 1 through 5 in fading marker were found within. I played the first one while staying up late that night. The sound was shaky. The tape's voice was hardly adolescent, restless, defensive. "What would happen if I saw something I shouldn't have?" Tyler stated. The therapist inquired, such as, after pausing, Tyler muttered, "She didn't yell. She simply gazed at her mother. They then seized her. My stomach grew constricted." I moved on to the following tape. Tyler, "She was dangerous, so they said she had to leave. However, she wasn't. She simply knew too much, in my opinion." He had some cracks in his voice by the third session. He discussed nightmares. "The door slams," the voice of a lady said. "Make her go away." He didn't have to say my name, but he didn't. I listened to a youngster who had suppressed a truth while I sat in that dim office, because lying seemed safer to the grown-ups in his life. Similar to how I attempted to modify my family's tale to make it more tenable, Tyler had been defending it. Years later, both versions were now coming apart on tape and on the record. I had more than recollection for the first time. I had proof that Thursday was the scheduled day for the family session. Although participation was not required, the clinic strongly encouraged it. Within an hour, Cynthia sent in her RSVP. Robert did the same. It didn't surprise me. They particularly enjoyed controlled performances in which they could act as victims of their circumstances. That day, I cleared my calendar. For me, not just for Tyler. What I intended to communicate was clear to me. I really didn't know what I needed to hear. The previous evening, I spent more time than usual standing in front of the bathroom mirror, hair up, not wearing any jewelry, very little makeup, nothing performative, simply being there, just accuracy. My outfit was blue, not in the black color spectrum, not in mourning, not recollection, a sharp object, formal but quiet, similar to a decision. I put Miss S. Rivera's letter in my luggage before I left my flat. I owed her being in the room, not because I needed it. When no one else noticed me, she did. At the hospital, when I was too little to name it, she wrote the truth. I went over Tyler's most recent treatment plan. I mentally practiced the session, including how I would open, handle redirection, and respond if someone yelled, wept, or rejected. I told myself that retaliation was not the point. Clarity was the key. Even if it came from the person his family attempted to hide, Tyler craved the truth. And perhaps I needed it to, in a subtle manner. Not to recover, not to make peace, but to be seen fully, professionally, and without apology. And it was return, not anger, that had won me that time. They were late. Cynthia in a beige coat. Neutral, dignified, and strategic are Robert and navy, hues that individuals choose to wear when they wish to appear innocent. Tyler was already sitting, tapping the hem of his sleeve with his fingers while his shoulder was rigid. I got up to welcome them. They gave a nod, courteous, no acknowledgement. Only the hazy aura of parents who were once revered. I gave them some water. They said no. I inquired whether they were prepared to start. "Naturally, we want what's best for our boy," Cynthia added with a smile. As I always did, I opened the file, sat across from them, and got to work. Tyler is reacting to stimuli from his surroundings, memory-related triggers, and in particular, repressed trauma. His symptoms are compatible with dissociative episodes rooted in early teenage experiences. Cynthia inclined her head, such as, I gazed straight at her, such as witnessing a sibling being institutionalized for the convenience of the home, without cause, without diagnosis, simply removal. A pause was followed by a flicker. Cynthia's eyes narrowed, but her face remained unchanged. Robert moved around in his seat. "Pardon me," he said. "Do you mean that we are to blame for our son's condition?" I shut down the file. "I'm stating that trauma isn't limited to areas of conflict. It takes place in family rooms and dining rooms, in homes that value quiet over security." Tyler's hand came to a stop. "You are the one," he muttered. "The girl who came down the stairs." I looked him in the eye. I said my name clearly. "Is Elise Monroe, a doctor." Cynthia's knuckles became white around the armrest, but her face remained intact. "Soft as a snake," she replied. "I recognized your appearance." Robert opened his mouth, but remained silent. Tyler blinked quickly as if his memories was returning to him. They took you, and I saw it. Mom told me you were hazardous, Cynthia interrupted. Years have passed since then. She wasn't feeling good. We took the necessary action. I spoke steadily. No, you characterized truth as unstable. You turned inquiries into symptoms and then you buried me. Robert got up. We're heading out. Tyler did not, however, move. Now I recall everything, he remarked. You didn't yell. You just turned around. You remained composed. Cynthia got up. She fell silent. She was a troubled youngster. Last to stand was me. No, I was a mirror. And what you saw didn't appeal to you. They went without another word. The door clicked shut. The room held its breath. Tyler bent over. You became a doctor, really? I gave a nod. He let out a painful breath. I believe they are now scared of you. I didn't grin. I refrained from boasting. I simply collected my notes and gave a quiet response. Excellent. I submitted a transfer request for Tyler the day following the session. It wasn't intimate, it was customary. It's not only immoral to treat someone who has such a strong connection to your past, it's risky. Not for them, for you. In less than an hour, the clinic director gave his approval. No inquiries. Just a quiet and a respectful nod. Many wouldn't have done what you did. I filed an internal note before I completely dropped the matter. I've included Tyler Sessions' notes, the recording transcripts, and an additional file called Family Influence, Suppression of Symptoms. I didn't make it up. I made no accusations. I simply captured reality. What had been true for years, concealed under unfinished paperwork and kind family smiles. I went to the patient database that was archived that afternoon. My name wasn't there. No file, no notes, no admissions record. I had never been institutionalized legally. However, I recalled the walls, the nighttime hum they made, the weight of the door that was locked. And when I asked for a search by insurance billing, there was silence. I discovered it there, an alias for a shadow file, the signature of a doctor I failed to realize, diagnosis. Acute psychosis in adolescence. Disruptive in behavior, I was 15. Therapy did not exist. Just observation, no medicine, nothing but quiet. I took it in my hands after printing it out. Truth is hefty, paper thin. Justice wasn't served. It was proof, but not just yet. I believed my narrative was too quiet to be significant for a long time. However, silent things make their impression. All you need to do is know where to search. The message was leaked by someone on the clinic board, but the story wasn't intended to become viral. Perhaps it was the wording. The tape transcripts could have been the cause. Maybe it was the fact that I signed my complete name for the first time in years without flinching. It was picked up by a small wellness blog 2 weeks later. Next, a forum on mental health rights. Then a reporter called and wanted a quote. I said no. My voice was no longer needed in the plot. The truth was right in front of everyone. A cease and desist was delivered by Cynthia. She accused a persistent campaign of public humiliation, emotional hardship, and slander. I returned to work after forwarding it to legal. I was spared the need to defend myself. The file was with me. The billing record was with me. The cassettes were with me. I received a brief email from Tyler. There, one line, as if nothing had occurred. I just spoke 2 words in response. Naturally, the Monroe case history was formally reviewed by the hospital. The psychiatrist who made the initial diagnosis gave up his license. Quietly, but not off the books, an ethics commission was established. One evening, I was discovered in the hallway by Dr. Patel, who asked, "Do you realize how uncommon it is for someone to return and reveal it from the inside?" I didn't come back to expose it, I said. I returned to comprehend it. The publicity was merely incidental. I walked home alone myself that evening. No background noise, no music. The sound of my own feet alone. Firm and sure. My name was being called for the first time in history, and I wasn't flinching this time. The envelope that held the invitation was cream in color. Heavy seal embossed on paper. A nationwide conference on the ethics of adolescent psychiatry. Misdiagnosis, power, panel title, and the price of silence. They wanted me to talk. I nearly declined. I wasn't a speaker. Applause was not what I wanted. However, I then considered how many voices are never given that opportunity. Additionally, how many females were still told they were too theatrical, too emotional, or too much? I said, yes. There were quiet, private rows of contemplative faces throughout the auditorium. Prepare your notebooks. No show, no lighting, just the facts. I kept some things from them. My family was not named. I didn't have to. I presented the story's outline, the way it tucked itself in, the way a label turns into a prison. It's so easy to pass off that cage as assistance. I looked up somewhere in the center and saw Tyler standing at the back of the room, not hiding. He didn't take his eyes off of mine. He waited until the room was empty after the session, then approached and said, I spoke with them. I informed them that I was done acting like they were decent people. I gave a nod. Now, that was his tale to tell. They didn't just make you the problem, he added. You were diagnosed by them. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. He knew already. I passed the clinic lobby that evening. The donor wall was made of glass with my name engraved on it. Dr. Elise Monroe, only 4 words, psychiatry. I didn't feel erased for once. I felt out of place. The envelope that held the invitation was cream in color, heavy seal embossed on paper, a national symposium on the ethics of adolescent psychiatry. Title of the panel, Power, Misdiagnosis, and the Price of Silence. They wanted me to talk. I nearly declined. I wasn't a speaker. Applause was not what I wanted. However, I then considered how many voices are never given that opportunity. Additionally, how many females were still told they were too theatrical, too emotional, or too much? I said, yes. There were quiet, private rows of contemplative faces throughout the auditorium. Notebooks ready? No show, no lighting, just the facts. Kept some things from them. My family was not named. I didn't have to. I presented the story's outline, the way it tucked itself in, the way a label turns into a prison. It's very easy to pass off that cage as assistance. Tyler was at the back of the room when I looked up in the middle, standing, not hiding. He didn't take his eyes off of mine. He waited until the room was empty after the session, then approached and said, I spoke with them. I informed them that I was done acting like they were decent people. I gave a nod. Now, that was his tale to tell. They didn't just make you the problem, he added. You were diagnosed by them. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. He knew already. I passed the clinic lobby that evening. The donor wall was made of glass with my name engraved on it. Dr. Elise Monroe, only 4 words, psychiatry. I didn't feel erased for once. I felt out of place. I had no intention of returning to the house. It was sold already. It was now occupied by a new family. The shutters had been painted and reseated. A wind chime hung beside the porch on the grass. Still, I drove by, parked on the other side, sat with the letter in my lap and the motor off. The edges of Miss S. Rivera's handwriting had faded, but it was still legible. You weren't ill. You frightened them. You will return one day. I had too. Not with yelling or fury, but with documents, with evidence, with a name they were unable to remove. This time, I exited the vehicle and made my way to the porch. The front window had a child's artwork pasted to it. The door was opened by the new owner. Curious yet friendly, I introduced myself. Claimed to have lived here once. She gave a nod, whispered, You are not the first one to return. I wasn't there for long. I didn't request entry. I just responded, This belongs here more than I do, and separated the letter into the mailbox. I sat with the stillness in the car again. Not the type one was afraid of. It felt deserved. They had rewritten my tale without asking if I had won, branded me, put me up, and dubbed me unstable. However, I did. And I experienced it aloud in classrooms, in case files on panels with glass etching, and in private meetings. I was no longer their embarrassment. I was my own worst enemy. And I had something greater than rage if the past ever knocked again. I knew the truth. I also know how to properly file it. Story 3. I discovered I was a guest at a table that had once been mine when I entered my own birthday supper at the age of 17. The scent of roasted garlic and my beloved cedarwood candles permeated the dining area. 11 of the 12 seats were occupied. Not for me, but one was empty. Chloe was the owner of the seat. My cousin now, younger than I am, better than me, but newer. My mother says so. I waited at the room's edge for someone to wish me a happy birthday. Nobody raised their heads. Not until Chloe gave a bewildered wave. "Oh, are you present?" My mom looked over, not in a friendly manner, not while feeling guilty. Just math. "I didn't anticipate your presence." Flatly, she said. "You weren't the intended recipient of this." I was surprised by how steadily my voice came out. "Why is she occupying my seat?" Marcus, my brother, didn't even stop using his fork. "Nora, you're not on the board." A year has passed since then. The will was revised by Dad. "You need to have gone through your emails." I blinked. "What will?" Quiet. "Don't look at me, Chloe. Grab the bread basket." My mom didn't respond. "Let's not ruin the evening," she remarked, pouring herself a glass of wine instead. I left wearing the gold bracelet my father had given me when I was 13. The one legacy that is inscribed. First, I refrained from crying. That evening, I tried to access the family trust site on my laptop. Invalid user. My own name was no longer functional. I now understood that they weren't ignoring me. I had been obliterated. 9 years later, I wasn't intending to go home. Not for the holidays, not for the birthday of my mom, not for anything. In Boston, I was folding napkins in the rear of a banquet hall. My phone buzzed halfway through a double shift. Final confirmations about the Bellamy Foundation Gala. Something in my muscle memory may have unlocked it after I nearly erased it. Danielle Bellamy was the sender. Have faith, dog. It had been years since I had seen that domain. I was still on the list, so no. I added a nice event flyer after scrolling. Headshots in 3 levels. Everyone is grinning. I used to refer to this sea of last names as family. And in the middle of the second row sat Chloe, dressed in the navy gown my mother wore to galas honoring Chloe Bellamy, who would go on to become the head of youth legacy programs. Beneath her quotation, "Our family is a firm believer in using tradition and togetherness to develop leaders. Unity, custom." I gulped back a chuckle. The list did not include my name, obviously not. Not as a visitor. As a legacy, no. However, they identified prior connections in the email footer. Was something odd? Be archived, Nora. Mailing list. The incorrect box has been ticked. A door had been left open. I pressed the print button. The flyer was folded, slipped it in my purse like proof. I also opened a file that I hadn't worked on in years that evening. Screenshots, agreements, clauses.names. One folder labeled, "What they overlooked." I discovered something greater than proof inside. My name is still on an unwritten clause from my grandmother's trust. Although they removed me from the party, they neglected to remove me from the position of authority. Still wearing my catering uniform, I sat on the side of my bed and held the printed flyer as if it were a debt to me. It didn't. They didn't either. For years, I convinced myself that they had made their decision and that I was done looking back. I had also created mine, living, autonomy, quiet. The flyer, however, refused to let go. As if it knew, Chloe's smile pierced the page. I took out the manila folder I had stored beneath my bed. One day, my roommate inquired as to whether it was old tax returns. Not exactly. Before they stopped my login, there were screenshots, handwritten notes, and digital printouts of trust documents within. A picture of my granny and me. The last lady who didn't wince when she mentioned my name. A letter followed. It was dated 8 years ago and was sent to Miss Nora Bellamy of the Bellamy Law Office. Not opened. With trembling hands, I ripped open the package containing a draft trust modification. There were 2 versions, one without a stamp and one with my name crossed out. Not yet decided. I should have closed the folder. My phone was buzzing when I should have been sleeping. Unknown figure. There. Chloe will be named ER during the gala. The documents still contain your name. I thought you should have a chance to talk before they bury that as well. JBGAZED at the television. JB, that was a name I hadn't heard since I was 17. The year I disappeared, the family's old accountant, Jeffrey Barnes, was sacked. With that, the quiet suddenly broke. They believed they had buried me in documents. Some ghosts were forgotten. Save your receipts. It was dawn when I got to Vermont. The type of dawn that had significance in the past. Ski vacations with the family, cards for Christmas. Legacy. It's cold now. Light through a shattered windshield. The key was left under a rock by an Airbnb host. I kept my arrival a secret from everyone. I didn't have to. I was remembered by the countryside, even if they made an effort not to. I drove to my grandmother's cabin, a tiny cottage on the outskirts of Bellamy Lake, rather than heading directly to the hotel where the gala was being hosted. No one touched it, even though it was officially part of the foundation now. Since her funeral, no, they were unable to sell it. She had included an odd stipulation in her will. Until someone who knows where the photo frame is cracked opens it, this house will remain unopened. Yes, I did. It was located directly above the antique mirror in the hallway, second from the left. A picture of us, wearing her pearls and clutching her hand. I was 8 years old. There was a crack at the rear of the frame and a folded message placed neatly behind it. They have attempted to obliterate you if you are reading this, but you are still a Bellamy and they have no authority over who is given this name. Inside was an original copy of the Bellamy Trust and a little brass key, the initial version of the edits. There was my name, legal and bold, intact, Nora Elise Bellamy, straight line, the second recipient. They believed I had forgotten who I was. It never occurred to them that I would go back to the one person who never asked me to prove it. The paper trail she left behind caught them off guard. They also had no idea that I would recall the beginning. I had no desire for a new dress. I wanted the dress. The one my mother wore when she officially opened the first building owned by the Bellamy Foundation. The one I recognized from the newspaper clipping that hung in my room as a child before Chloe's pictures took its place. Midnight, navy, length of the floor, modest neckline. Each seam has a power stitch. It was at one of the town's upscale antique consignments. When I took it off the rear rack, the owner let out a gasp. "All right, this is an original. The Bellamy family owned it." I gave a kind grin. Yes, I am aware that I didn't correct her when she mentioned that, in theory, it was Chloe's grandmother's outfit. But now it was mine. I rented a room at a small in 2 blocks from the gala venue. Didn't bother with valet or red carpet treatment. I wasn't walking in via the front. I phoned in a favor. A makeup artist I'd previously given champagne to at a Boston event. She owed me. She made me appear like memory. Not contemporary. Not fashionable, but familiar. Like a photo frame someone shoved in a drawer but couldn't bring themselves to throw it before leaving. I packed my clutch with 2 items, a folded note from my grandma and a printed copy of the trust clause with my name on it. Then, rather than admiring myself, I glanced in the mirror to bid farewell to the version of myself that believed that keeping quiet was safer. I wasn't come for an apology tonight. The microphone was what I was after. At 7:41 p.m., I entered the Bellamy Foundation Gala by the staff door rather than the front. The door was held by a waiter. He made no request for a name. He simply gave me the impression that he thought I belonged somewhere significant. He just couldn't recall where. That was the idea. With its gold trim on white linen, crystal chandeliers, and guests sipping champagne and praising one another's legacies, the ballroom was a polished lie. Like vapor, I drifted across tables. No seat assignment, no name tag. Eyes, however, followed. Some squinted as if they were attempting to locate me, or from a newspaper, or from school. I picked up a gala program at the welcome table years ago. I turned it open. Honorees on 3 pages. Chloe's column was filled. Emerging leader, mentor, eyesight that is inherited. I wasn't present. Obviously not. The legacy wall, a corridor adorned with framed pictures of Bellamy's founders, donors, and family portraits spanning 3 generations, caught my attention next. Walked it gently, row after row. My mother in her youth. My siblings. Chloe wears her uniform from prep school. Then I saw it. One frame drooped a little. It said Bellamy Children, 2009 on the brass plaque. It's Family Day. However, the interior photo was incorrect. The left side has too much white space. I took a closer look. Whoever updated it had clipped me out. The original is still barely discernible behind the frame and through the backing glass. The actual snapshot was tucked away carelessly. I'm in the middle of the entire picture. However, someone had scrawled an X over my face using a crimson marker. I refrained from crying. I inserted the USB into the AV laptop behind the curtain and snapped a photo of it. I would just create my own chapter if they decided to remove me from the program. Every gala has its moment, so the saying goes. My own began at 8:19 p.m. The family had just turned to see Chloe, who was dressed in white satin, take the stage. Like courteous thunder, the hall echoed with applause. Leaning into the microphone was the MC. "We salute a lady of elegance, vision, and the entire Bellamy name tonight, representing a new generation." For the presentation reel, the lights were turned down. However, that wasn't what they had anticipated. The displays flickered and suddenly went blank in place of Chloe's well-planned montage. A voice filled the room, mine, unambiguous, "Be calm, unquestionable. I'm known to some of you. I told some of you to forget me." People turned. A few people let out a gasp. Others only gazed. "Nora Elise Bellamy is my name. This is the family I was born into. This is the room where I grew up. That table is where I ate, wore the bracelet, earned the scholarship. Then I was removed from the screen behind me. It seemed like the ancient family photo was unaltered. I'm dead center, alive with a smile. The version they substituted for it came next, redacted and cropped. There were murmurs. The trust document followed. My name, my legal situation, uncrossed. True, it's still binding. The navy blue of my dress caught the limelight as I moved onto the edge of the stage. My mom's gown. It is impossible to erase someone and preserve their legacy. Unity cannot be achieved by silencing a child. You can't cover up a broken truth with a phony tradition. A clap came from someone in the crowd. Another Chloe then remained still, her note cards shaking. My mother sat rigid, white-knuckling her glass. And me? I acted without waiting for approval. I just expressed what I had to say. There's nothing I'm here to steal. I am here to remind you that it was always mine. Not all silence is meaningless. It can be louder than applauding at times. That's what I said, and it filled the ballroom. Nobody made a move. There was no glass clinking, no pretending to cough or laughing politely to lighten the situation. Until my mom got up. She didn't rush. She moved as if she still had command of the story, as if the narrative hadn't been torn from her grasp. With one hand on the platform and the other on her pearls, she moved up to stand next to Chloe. Her voice was brittle and silky as she whispered, "Nora, sweetheart, I didn't meet you here," her gaze. "So where has the location been throughout the years?" She forced a rehearsed grin onto her lips. "Once the event is over, we may discuss. Let's avoid creating a scene. You did it already," I said. Simply said, "You didn't think I would be in it." Behind us, the screen still showed the document. The part with my name on it is unquestionable, legitimate, and stamped. Then came the unexpected sound. A man stood in the rear and a chair scratched. Former accountant Jeffrey Barnes, JB, who was banished for asking too many questions, pulled out a folder. People lie, but the Foundation's books don't. I've also preserved copies. My mom became pale. Chloe lost her temper. It's slander. She is only seeking attention. I didn't recoil. Truth is what I'm here for. It only brought attention. One of the women at the front got up. Then there was a man beside the doors, and at last there was another round of applause. But this time, it wasn't for Chloe. Legacy wasn't the reason. It was for the sake of justice. And it wasn't handshakes and hugs that brought justice. Files, names, and weight were included. It's not an apology, a gavel. Before I had even poured my coffee the morning following the gala, my phone called 4 times. Unknown figure, voicemail, do it again. I had 11 missed calls by noon. My mother gave me 9. The initial voicemail was kind. "Nora, it's your mother. We must not allow last night to spiral out of control." The subsequent one, "You have no idea how much strain we were under. Your dad, he believed it was in everyone's best interests." The 6th message broke. "You know you're not the only one that was harmed." I didn't respond. Instead, my sister Sarah sent a message. Not even a greeting? No justification. Only a PDF file. "Stop and desist. It seems that recovering your name is now considered defamatory. Chloe." She went straight to Instagram instead of taking the legal process. A caption for a picture of her wearing a stark white suit. "Legacy is earned, not taken. We get up. We're not begging. Bellamy is powerful." Thousands of likes. A single highly calculated remark was pinned. It's funny how some people only turn up when money is at stake. That one from Ethan, my cousin. It didn't matter though. Because 24 hours later, an anonymous folder surfaced on a public disk titled Bellamy Gala, internal email threads, reporting on expenses, reroute the grant. Chloe's signature on invoices connected to creative development consultants who didn't exist. I wasn't the one who released the skeletons. The match had been lighted by Jeffrey Barnes or someone like. I didn't have to battle. All I had to do was remain still and let their own fire to find oxygen. Please play my mother's 12th voicemail in the background, Nora. They are discussing the inquiry. This can be stopped. I hit play and then delete. I used to write my name in notebooks when I was 17 years old to help me remember it was my Nora, Bellamy, Elise, not that girl. Not the one that we avoid discussing. No line in red ink should be removed, only me. I registered it as a trademark 9 years later. The Nora Fund, nor with Nora alone, nor with Bellamy. A charity for young ladies who have been marginalized by their own families, cut off, kicked out, or conveniently overlooked. Exactly 1 week following the gala, the website went live. Their board seat was not taken by me. Didn't reply to their press statement stating that the Bellamy family is going through internal changes. Didn't reply to the family lawyer's mail proposing an updated trust. The seat wasn't what I wanted. Finally, I wanted the silence that followed my name to feel like strength rather than punishment. I placed the key around my neck on a necklace after taking it from my grandmother's cottage. As a private individual, not as a Bellamy heir, I repurchased the property. I then uploaded a single image on the webpage of the Nora Fund, a bracelet made of gold, the one I received at the age of 13 from my father. Engraved heritage. First, I wrote beneath it, silence is the foundation of some legacies. Fire is used to recover others. No faces, no hashtags, and no remarks. Only the words. Because names can be stolen, however, identity is earned. And being courteous didn't gain me mine. I earned it by spelling it out and survived the erase better than they ever imagined. The Bellamy Foundation debuted a new logo a month after the event. My name was not mentioned in the news release. Rebranding, no apologies. They chose the phrase realignment. Chloe stepped down softly, not a scandal, simply focused on oneself. The Vermont Legacy Tribune had an exclusive interview with my mother. Wearing a delicate blue outfit, she sat in her formal living room and smiled tremblingly. Family is difficult, but we're getting better. We have always been a healing family. She wasn't corrected by me. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't have to. I had already left. Not concealed. Not removed. Just out of grasp. The Bellamy name was theirs to preserve. I didn't want to share a label with others who sharpened blades behind it and wore it like armor. Once more, my name, Nora, had meaning, and without them, it meant much more. A girl called Jada, who received a scholarship from the first round of the Nora Fund, received my grandmother's pearls. I was referred to as Miss Bellamy. I shook my head and grinned. Just Nora. They were never able to comprehend that. The throne was not what I wanted. Didn't require their table seat. Ghostly handshakes and marble room applause didn't matter to me. All I wanted was my voice again. And I didn't have to yell now that I had it. I could mutter. The walls would continue to recall. The gala disappeared. The nameplate was altered. The press went on, but no sound. Silence lingered. Not the kind they punished me with. The type one selected. I still wake up some nights believing I'm 17, that there will be a response if I knock on the kitchen door. But they don't. I don't need the door open anymore, so that's okay. I constructed another one. I spoke at a nearby institution last week. It's a small auditorium with foldable chairs, not a huge TEDx stage, and females who took notes like their life depended on it. One held out her hand. Feeling anxious? Bright. How did you extend forgiveness to them? I stopped. Then I was honest. I didn't. I just stopped asking them to explain who I am. The issue was always that. I was too annoying to be around, too loud to be obeyed, and too quiet to be heard. So they made up a tale about me that didn't exist, and I gave them some leeway. However, stillness has a limit, and I arrived wearing navy blue, bearing a document they believed would remain hidden under a chandelier. I was referred to as bitter. They then referred to me as brave. However, they never addressed me by name until I had them read it out loud. Here it is then. Nora Elise Bellamy is my name. And this? The last word was this. They didn't expect me to talk. I was obliterated. So I came back with the last word.